Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. Someone asked me, how many things can you eat for breakfast in India? And my guess was maybe about 200, 300. It seems that I was off the mark by a massive margin. On one website alone, there are approximately 824 different types of food for breakfast. As I looked at the range of items, I realized that it wasn't just a list of 824 items. It was 824 vegetarian options. If you count non-vegetarian food, the lists skyrocket. Why does a random list of breakfast foods matter to us as learners? It matters because of a concept I call database. You know this concept, don't you? If you are someone who has had only a few types of breakfast, then the idea of 824 types of breakfast options is mind-boggling. And it doesn't matter whether you're making the breakfast or you're just eating them, your brain starts to see the world differently. When we think of talent, we often see it as something that you either have or don't have. However, talent is less about an innate skill and more about the depth of your database, the collection of knowledge, references, and experiences that shape your ability to perform a task well. The question we have to ask is, why is the database so powerful? And we understand this when we look at children. By the time a child is 5, they typically have a vocabulary of around 2,000 to 2,500 words. This varies based on exposure, environment, and whether they're learning multiple languages. More than just words, they absorb expressions, cultural nuances, and contextual meaning. The process isn't just about language acquisition, it's about building a database. A child fluent in multiple languages has a more extensive database, giving them a greater flexibility in expression and understanding. The same principle applies to skill acquisition beyond language. Whether drawing, carpentry, or making coffee, each skill is a form of language. The broader your database, the more control you have over execution. I observed this firsthand while watching Renuka draw. When she encounters difficulty, she often has to look for references. Now, this isn't unusual. Professional artists are always using references. But her struggle comes from having a smaller database to pull from. So she has fewer reference points, and therefore it is harder for her to know, am I going to put the hand this way or that way? How does the leg fold when someone jumps? That database is very small because she hasn't been drawing for as long as maybe I have or some other artist has. And this database makes the difference between how quick you are, how skilled you are in any language, whether it's drawing or French or carpentry for that matter. And I did bring up French because I'm learning French. Well, Renuka says I speak French, and I do, but I'm still at the very beginning. So I struggle not because I lack the intelligence, but because my database of words, phrases, expressions, that's too small. I'll start to say something and then I'm stuck. I don't know what's the word for weight. I don't know what's the word for a pole. It's not just vocabulary. It's everything. Without enough stored references, I lack control, and it makes me feel like I'm not good at French, that everybody's better than me. Because that's the feeling we get. We go into a watercolor class, we look at other people drawing, and we go, they're better than me. Everyone is better than me. Everyone is better than you at writing, in French, in pretty much everything that you look around. You think, everyone is better than me. And it is largely because you don't have enough of a database. And this concept becomes much bigger and broader and a little more scary when you think of society as a whole, because studies show that by the time a child turns 4, a significant gap exists in language exposure. A child from a professional family hears approximately 45 million words by the age of 4. These are repeated, but lots and lots of words and sentences, 45 million. A child from a working class family hears about 26 million words. A child from a low-income family hears 13 million words. There's this massive gap. And this gap isn't just about words, but concepts, problem solving, cultural understanding. And it all shapes future learning. The child with a smaller database has less control over the language, but it also leads to lower perceived skill and consequently fewer opportunities. Building a database takes years, and this is why you look at Nobel Prizes, and in physics, the average age of the laureates is 55. In chemistry, 58. Medicine, 56. These scientists don't suddenly become brilliant at 60. Their accumulated database of knowledge and connection enables them to make breakthrough discoveries. I know that sounds a little klutzy. So what happens is they go through their life, putting all the bits and pieces together, and then they seem to have a eureka moment much later because of that database. And the same applies to artists, musicians, pretty much anybody who is skilled or what you'd call talented. They have been building the database. Mastery in any field, language, art, science, depends on how well you've developed your database. A small database means struggle. A large one offers control and fluidity. So if you ever feel that you're untalented at something, consider this. Do you lack ability or simply need a bigger database? In short, if you want to learn a particular skill, you have to build that vocabulary on an ongoing basis. This is not a one-time task, but a continuous learning and application process. Hence, if you want to learn about storytelling, you must continue to read about storytelling. Apply some of those concepts consistently, get some of them wrong, fix them, and that's how you build a database in your brain. And you might say, well, that's all very fine, but what are we to do with this information? I'll give you a practical example. I bought a camera, a Leica monochrome, so it takes photos just in black and white. Now, Leica is very much a camera that has very few buttons at the back. In comparison, I also have a Sony camera, and there are about 100 menu buttons, maybe more. But the Leica has very few. To this date, 5 years later, I'm still learning how to use some of those buttons, how to use the profiles, how to use little bits and pieces that I didn't know about. Now, I'm a crazy guy, you know that. I take the camera everywhere I go. And when I mean everywhere, it's almost everywhere. I may not take it for a walk in the morning, but if I'm going to the store, I have it. If I'm going to the cafe, wedding, I'll probably take it to a funeral. I take it everywhere I go. So I'm taking pictures all the time, sometimes 3,000 pictures a month. And while a professional might take a lot more, 3,000 is a lot for someone who's just using it as a hobby. And still, there is stuff that I'm learning all the time. And this is about building the database about how the camera works. There is a separate database of how a photograph works. There is a different database about how composition works. All of these databases, when put together, they form the art of photography. At the same time, there is storytelling. There's also podcasting. We're all building these databases. And if we do little bits every day, and I mean every single day, almost without fail, that's when you'll start to get very good at something. The generic excuse that most of us have is that we have no time. This excuse comes from parents who have one kid, parents who have 2 kids or 3 kids, and before they had the kids, they had no time. After they have the kids, they have no time. It also comes from people who don't have kids. They too don't have time. And you have to ask yourself, how do the parents who have the kids suddenly have extra time for those kids? And they've made time for those kids. And if you're someone who doesn't have kids, you have to make time for that kid. And if you have kids, then you have to make time for another kid. And that's how you start to build a database. Nobody said it was easy. Nobody said that you have to do a lot every day. You just have to do a tiny little bit. Something that you've decided to do in advance. And when you do that, you'll find that you're making progress. You'll find that you are doing something in an incorrect way. You're not making progress, and you have to find another method. With French, I signed up for as many as 10 different courses. I paid for 10 different courses, and only 1 or 2 of them work for me. So imagine the effort that went into going down all of these dead ends, and the money and the time. But that's what you probably need to do if you want to learn something in life, if you want to create the database. I will have created a database of French, of Spanish, of storytelling, of cartooning, of dancing, of cooking, and you too can do that. Remember, if all you're eating is one type of breakfast, that's cool. But there are 824 different options, and that's just Indian vegetarian breakfast. So I think you can expand your world a little bit, and then you become talented. You have more control over life, over things. You become like that kid that probably has 25 million more words than the other kid. I think that's worth shooting for. That's it from me. What's the one thing you can do today? I don't think that you should try to learn multiple things at the same time. But I think that if you can get to 5000bc.com, for example, and start a taking action post, then you can do a tiny bit every single day. That tiny bit might take you 20 minutes, 50 minutes, I don't know, that's up to you. But it'll change the way you look at things. And you'll be held accountable for it. So go to 5000bc.com. If you're not a member, it's worth it. There are things that you spend a lot of money on. This doesn't cost as much. If you are a member and you've gone, oh, I should go back. Well, this is your hint. Go back and start that taking action post and go with it. Run with it. And let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. On the 28th of May, the pre-sale course is going to be available. Now, pre-sale is really what sells our products. We create scarcity and urgency, and you've noticed this. And even if they are digital products, we sell only a fixed number, say 25. Now, if you've been with us for a long time, you'll know that this is true. But what causes that pre-sale? How do we set up the pre-sale? How do people buy on that specific day? There was a time when we did not have pre-sale. There was a time we did not have the urgency and scarcity. And it cost us quite a bit because I had to do a lot more courses to pay for that or to create the same amount of revenue. And then when we did the pre-sale, we were able to sell more products and therefore there was more leverage for us. That's what I'm saying. This one little thing makes a big difference. Your sales page is not as crucial as you think. It's nice, it's wonderful, it's important, but the pre-sale, it almost sets it up so that people stop reading the sales page and they buy your product or service or course. So check out psychotactics.com/pre-sale. There are some goodies. You'll like the goodies. And, well, that's it from Psychotactics Land. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? You know the artist Vincent van Gogh, and, well, you'd say he was a fantastic painter from the very start. He was born talented. I mean, he is one of the most well-known painters in our age. But he wasn't born a fantastic painter. And you don't need to be subjective or objective with that analysis. You can go to the Vincent van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam and see that his work was not too bad, but it's not as impressive as we know it to be. And he painted a lot. I mean, he was literally doing that one thing a day, except he was over the top. He was doing one canvas a day and then painting over the other canvas and then turning over the side and then painting over that one. So he got an expanded database. But he got that expanded database from the work that he did, but also from some of the best artists. Now, when you look at who he came in contact with, they were Émile Bernard, Paul Gauguin, Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, Camille Pissarro, Georges Seurat, Claude Monet. And as a result, their work and ideas would have clashed with his, but they also complemented it. And as a result, his work would have become far superior to that of a person who had been working alone. Motivation comes from many sources. It's hard to know why people would do what they do, but it's the acquisition of information. And this is why an experienced cartoonist can draw almost anything, because they're reaching into their mental database. It's also why a beginner struggles. They don't have enough information to combine the bits and pieces. And so what we see as talent and not talent, most of it is just database. I'll say bye for now, and we will see you in 5000 BC. And you want to do that taking action post. Bye-bye.